Local productions seen on Delta College Public Media are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Junia Doan's The Spark. I'm Junia Doan, and thank you for joining us. My guest today is cultural historian and author Betsy Prioleau. Welcome, Betsy. So I'm very interested. I hadn't heard the term before, cultural historian. Could you explain it to me and the audience?
Yes. Cultural historian is kind of an umbrella word for humanities. And I acquired this title, if you will, when I began teaching cultural studies, global cultural studies at NYU. And so at that point, cultural historian seemed a good tag because I was interested in all forms of humanity. I got my PhD in American literature, but to me, the fascinating thing was to incorporate literature into all the arts and all of history. And so that's how I ended up with cultural historian.
Would you teach that differently than history?
I taught holistically. That is, when I was at NYU, it was wonderful because you could pick a theme, any theme you wanted. In this case, I picked the seducer through history because I was writing a book on the subject. And I was able to incorporate music, art, literature, history. And this way, you had a whole incorporative vision of history and the arts. And I think it made it more meaningful to the students as well as to me because you see everything as a whole, history as a
Oh,
whole.
that's nice. So I read, as I told you earlier, a good part of at least two of your books. And
Mhm,
if what you had taught, or let me ask it the other way, if what you
mhm.
had covered in the books happened in other countries, would stories like that come for the experience, or that's just Western?
um, Interesting. I had to stick to Western culture in all of my books. And that's because I'm not an expert. And I wanted to stay away from subjects that I didn't feel comfortable with, which is why two of my books, the first one on William Dean Howells, this neglected and maligned author who was the dean of American letters and Mark Twain's best friend, um, he was one of the major figures of the Gilded Age, and so was Mrs. Miriam Leslie. And that was familiar territory to me. And so I like to stick to subjects that I can explore further, but ones that I have some familiarity with.
And you took an interest in women and their voices and their leadership roles. And how did that come about?
Oh, that's a story, actually. I was teaching at Manhattan College at the time, and I wanted to get a lot of students interested in literature, so I picked a topic out of the blue, the seductress in literature. And class was packed. But after class was where it really happened. Students just poured into my office and they said they felt so disempowered in their love lives, that things weren't working out. And why couldn't they be seductresses? Which is to say, to get men to love them and not use them. And they felt that the sexual revolution had let them down. And they wanted a master plan. They wanted rules. They wanted some help. And at the time, my daughter was heading off to college, and I didn't want her to enter that brutal world without some guidance. So then I started exploring the seductresses of history. And by seductresses, it's such a negative stereotype. I mean, we think of these thong snapping vamps and man pleasers and that kind of thing. But in fact, these were strong, um, empowered women who had it all in their personal lives, fulfillment in love, life, and work. And it was such a surprise to me to find out that the seductress wasn't at all what we thought, and that the love arts were really a distinguished and really an enlightened form of artistry for women that actually promoted self-development and was actually in sync with all of the highest values of feminism. So that was an exciting project to peel back all of those old myths and find a way to have women feminists of the 21st century empowered in every aspect of their lives.
Well, as I read through that, what I took away so far, haven't finished, I told you the two books, but that they heard their own voices. And the most interesting part is marriage was just one of the moves. They either wanted it or they didn't want it for whatever reasons they did, but they had a lust for knowledge and leadership that however they needed to get there, they practiced, including sex. And I was reading this about who is doing this today, after women's lib and set asides and all this kind of thing. And I don't know that I know, but I know that women aren't happy and men are confused. So I don't know what kind of period you'd say we're in right now as a culture, and really it's not the
Mm,
purpose of this show to examine that. But it is interesting since you've been writing about people in different centuries and how they took on the culture of the times and had this messianic almost effect on men, a lot of them, and less so on the culture till they became famous. And the role of fame, through writing or speaking, is another thing that came through to me. They fought for and earned recognition on their own name.
right. I
So,
think these are incredible feminist vanguard role models for now, because they finished the feminist revolution. Seems to me, um, as you said, I think there's a kind of brownout now in sexual power. Women are feeling like they've sort of thrown in the towel, really. Um, I think 79% of Gen Z have given up on dating apps, for example, and women are not feeling good about themselves. And what was fascinating to me about the seductresses, as you've pointed out, is that it wasn't what we've been taught is attractive to men. In fact, the first chapter of my book is about belles. These were women who were emphatically not beautiful. So if they weren't beautiful, what was it? And women today feel so insecure about their bodies and so on. But honestly, love is a head trip. It really is.
yes,
It's
I agree.
it's cerebral magic. And that's what these women practiced. It was their radiant personalities and their minds that enamored men for life and afterward. So that to me was incredibly inspirational, especially today with social media bombarding women with so much propaganda about how they have to look and so on. It's true that you have to, if you want to be a real seductress and stand out, you have to have a signature meanness, because seduction is all about drama, self-drama. And that includes a lot of physical arts, including, cosmetics and dress and setting and dance and all of that. But the real heavy magic is, as I said before, it's using your brain. And there's
Right.
nothing more seductive than a fully developed, actualized, powerful woman. And all of the
Or
women in,
man.
or men, oh yes, and that
Or a
was
developed woman. Who are they going to talk to, really?
exactly. And a second book of mine was Swoon, about men and what women want in men. And it's, again, it explodes all the stereotypes, all the tired stereotypes about money and all the rest of it, and power. It's not what women want at all. And instead, it's this sort of ancient love artistry that's been around since prehistory almost. And we're hardwired to respond to people with, I love this phrase, ornamental minds.
Yes.
People with brains who just are inexhaustible people.
But there are exceptions, and I'm going to raise it now because I didn't understand it myself. And
Hmm.
both of the people I know, I,
Hmm.
both of them are friends. But
Hmm.
anyway, one of them, we were at a dinner party, my husband and three or four other couples, and one of the married men just almost was out of his chair for my friend who was sitting across the living room. And I thought, what is it that he could shame his wife so by
Hmm.
reaching out and saying how gorgeous she was and blah, blah, blah. And she was embarrassed by it, but she didn't say anything particularly smart. She was very good looking and still is. I didn't understand that. And then I had another friend who was studying to be a psychologist, and she had to do some therapy herself. And so she had these big, beautiful eyes. She went to therapy, and the leader or the doctor or whatever who was supposed to help her really wanted to date her, to go out with her. And I thought, what did she say? What did she do except she had these magnetic eyes? So outside of the mind and that kind of thing, are there other ways that seduction entraps or seduces or enchants?
Well, in the first instance, the case of your friend and her husband, I would guess that the husband and wife don't have the spark anymore, to use the name of your show. I think really it was the wife and possibly the husband who weren't keeping the creative tension alive. And we're misguided about love in the first place because it's a verb. It's a constant alternating current, and you have to keep it bubbling, as they say in music. You just have to keep things moving. Otherwise, there's a bliss dip. And most people in marriage don't know how to keep that going. They don't know how to keep love alive. And that's what the art of love was actually devoted to in the first place, was to combat that natural drift to satiety and boredom. So my guess is that that man was feeling insecure or bored, and she probably was the same. And so it's a classic male defense mechanism to say, oh, yeah, I'm attracted to her because she's beautiful. But beauty is a power surge, a very short one, though. And it doesn't last. As Bernard Shaw said, he said, whoever looks at it after it's in the house for 2 days, you have to have more because it fades. That would be the first case. The second one about the eyes. I do think that body language is one of the most important skills in the physical arts, and that includes carriage, but it also includes eye work. And the eyes convey so much vitality and sparkle. And one of the seductresses in my book actually was loved for the devilish wickedness in her eyes. I mean, she just knew how to, it's called eye work in the theater, but that is very, very seductive, more so than possibly other forms of body language because it expresses so much of the soul and the self.
How important is soul connection?
You mean the idea that you find your soulmate, somebody who, the perfect Jack for the perfect Jill? Is that what you mean? Yes.
Well,
Um,
some people are more layered than others, you know.
oh, you mean
Um, I'm in more of a spiritual bond, perhaps, or at least recognition.
when you find somebody that attracts you, right? I think the seductresses or any woman who's interested in captivating a man for life, I think these people have antennae for this is an elaborate social skill, is to sense where a person's coming from, what their needs are, what they want. It doesn't mean that you necessarily are entranced by those qualities yourself, but the great social mavens all have this anyway. If you think about, well, not that we're talking about men right now, but if you think about Bill Clinton, if you've ever met him, he just senses right away this. It has a deep instinct for who you are, where you're coming from, and a sense of your interiority.
So, one of the themes of the books I have read, particularly Seductress, has to do with the importance of mothering or the mother aspect towards the person who's in love with you.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's control. I was surprised how often the surrender was in that arena or included that arena.
It all goes back to, I hate to say it, but the goddess is a religion that's been unmediated by patriarchy. So when you look at the goddess cults, you understand the sort of the, the the real DNA of seduction. And the mother goddesses also included sexuality in their holistic image, so that we yearn. It may be, again, implanted deep in the subconscious, but we yearn for the maternal sweets in love. We want to be nourished, we want to be cherished. At the same time, though, you have to understand that it's not one thing. If a woman just did that, then you would have a retro, 19th century woman. But it's not that. It's a constant flux all the time between maternal sweets and a tang of anxiety, a conflict, a little bit of distance. So you have this constant oscillation. I think that's what makes love alive. It's not anything static.
You
It's
mean
not
the
one.
separation or the feeling of being separated from or left or
Exactly.
unavailable?
There's perfect. Yeah, she said it exactly. It's that alternation between synthesis and separation. And it's
And
the
don't men like
alternation.
separation because it's more they're beings a little bit more autonomous, so I read, than women. I don't think it's true, but that's what I read.
That
So
men are more autonomous.
20th century or 21st century men, they want to be in, but they need the approval of the guys that are out, or the woman leaves them
Uh,
for a little while, and
I don't.
it's they can't call it a dance, but it's remember me, and I'm leaving. Oh no, no, you can't leave.
I think that's another defense mechanism. I mean, I did a lot of studies about male psychology and love, and actually, they need attachment in many, many studies more than women. They take longer to get over a breakup than women. It's just that because they're so vulnerable, they set up, I think, an awful lot of defense mechanisms that we've talked about, the bro culture and all of that, and the hypermasculinity. I think that's all an elaborate shield against tremendous vulnerability that men have.
Did you find in any of your research topics that were poorly covered or scantily covered?
Well, for example, Miriam Leslie in Diamonds and Deadlines, her life had been very superficially covered. I mean, there was a biography which I consulted, but it turns out that the biographer had bought into Miriam Leslie's own narrative and had not dug deeper into her life. And I was very lucky to have access to research that wasn't available to her and to discover that she was half black, for example, which was dead secret during her life and which she had worked very, very hard to conceal. Among other things, the fact that she had begun life as a sex worker. I mean, that was something that she worked very hard to cover up. So that her life had been very poorly covered. And
Here's a
oh,
psychology question. I think there's some psychological, not antisocial, but you could probably get the right name, in which people don't really have a moral sense. They are just very seductive and interesting and appealing, but they sometimes destroy people on their way through to getting what they want. What is the word?
the
There is
psychopath,
some,
I think they
but
call them
do
a
you think some of
sociopath.
the
I
what?
think it's a sociopath or
Yes,
a sociopath.
sociopath.
I don't like to use the word narcissist because it's bandied around too much, and
Yes,
it's a complicated subject. But you're right. There are people definitely who seduce without any feeling for the people that they're seducing, hard-boiled, uh, brutal people who exploit other people. I excluded those from my book. And I also think that this is where the demonization of seductresses comes in, because men are so terrified of their power that they've portrayed them as, witches and vamps and hard-boiled, um, husband stealers and that sort of thing. So I think that's part of a way of controlling uh, the unusual and exorbitant power that women have in the field of eros and love. Because
well, what
women are
if you're not so brilliant writer or speaker or a philosopher? How do you enchant a man?
if you were a philosopher,
No, no, no. If a woman didn't have the really originality of these women, the lust, I mean, the desire to be, and the way you wrote was they all guarded their freedom for the most part. They didn't
mhm.
want to be under the thumb and then he would marry for one reason or another. And I kept reading, what were
Mhm.
marriage laws at the time? What else do I need to know here that would have
oh,
influence
oh, I,
there?
I see. I see what you're saying. What does the ordinary person do? The ordinary.
Yes.
And I've picked some extraordinary people. All right. I think everybody is unique. I think every human being is unique. And I think that people have been conditioned and socialized to sand down their edges and not be their true selves. And I think women just need to tap into their own special genius, whatever it is, their own specialties. And everybody's interesting, everybody's fascinating. It's just that women don't have the courage. They don't have the knack. They don't have the idea that they can mark up their merchandise and 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 really floor it with their own special personalities. I really believe that. I believe every woman can be a seductress. I truly believe that if she wants to be. Now, a lot of people couldn't care less, but if you do, if you want to have them enchant whoever you want to and keep them enchanted, this is for you. It's not for everybody, but I think if you do want it, I think every person has something very special about them, and it's just that they don't have the courage and the will or the conditioning really to really run with their personalities. That's what I'm saying. And once you do that, there's nothing more enticing than a real authentic person who's powerful and exciting and vivacious.
Most of the men that they attracted were singular in their own way. And so I'm thinking about this woman. I don't know that she can be that singular, but I don't know that every man wants that kind of dynamism. But that's speculation. I want to thank you for being part of this. Are really so interesting to me, and it's such an opportunity to talk about subjects that just don't show up every day uh, over lunch or coffee or no, but it's back to the original. It's cultural history, but it's culture as lived by real people in real times. So I'm very happy to have had the opportunity uh, to exchange some words, and at some point I hope we continue. And I say to my audience every year, every time, please go out and do something kind for someone you know and someone you don't know, and do it again every day. People need that. People want that. Recognize their
Yes.
humanity
Yeah.
and their
Yes.
genius, as you would say.
To contact Junia, send her an email at juniadonsthespark@gmail.com. For more information, program schedules, and news about future guests, go to www.juniadonthespark.com. Thank you for joining us. See you next time on Junia Doan's The Spark.
Local productions seen on Delta College Public Media are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.